to introduce our speaker. Kathy.
Thanks, Jerry. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker this morning and our topic, leading with emotional intelligence. So what is it? How do we get better at it, and why do we need it? And it's great to see so many people that came out even and said, when I talked to you this morning, I came specifically for the topic. I think whether you're in transition or you're leading an organization, we all need more emotional intelligence. So this will be a fun and interactive session for you this morning. Marilynn Graves is the principal of MG Insights. She has been in her own business for over 15 years and has a focus in leadership development and team building and training, specializing in emotional intelligence. She has launched leadership development programs and young professional programs in banks. She's been in commercial banking and other service industries, so she brings a wealth of industry and financial experience to the table, as well as her organizational development skills. So with that, I'd like to, and the other thing I should mention, Marilynn is a consulting partner to my firm, CMP, and I'm so proud to have her on our team and co-leading our Women's Professional Development Initiative. So, welcome,
Thank you.
Marilynn.
Thank you. So I actually started my career in finance. I will be aging myself. I started at Continental Bank.
Yay!
Yay, all right.
Ex-con.
Are you an ex-con?
Yes,
all right.
I sure am.
All right. So I met my husband there. So there are two ex-cons in our family. So that I actually then worked for American National Bank. Anybody remember American National Bank? All right. So they all disappear after I start. But interestingly, at American National Bank, a name that you guys might recognize, Ed Karasak. Anybody know Ed Karasak? Yeah. He and I worked together. He was in, I don't know if he was in audit at that time, but he was more in the true financial management side. I was on the management accounting side, doing like line of business profitability, product profitability. So anyway, somehow though, throughout the many years of my career, I kept moving to organizational development. That just seemed to be where my heart was. It probably has something to do with the fact that there are 4 psychologists in my family, and a minister, and a principal of a school. So I was the outlier when I went into the business world. So emotional intelligence has just been one of these things that has always been something just always gravitated back to. So we're going to talk about it a little bit today. I will share with you that it's trending a lot. You read articles about it all the time. Most of those articles are pretty surface. They really go into about 2 of what I consider 6 important elements or concepts about emotional intelligence. So we're going to tap into all 6 of those today. The reason I really think this is important to share is it's a differentiator. It's a differentiator for you if you're in a job and you're trying to move up to a more executive level and you need to get into greater people skills. It's a differentiator if you're in transition and you're going to be interviewing and people are going to start asking you those, what do they call it, smart, I can't remember what they're called, smart, I think? Behavioral. Yeah, but they're behavioral, but they have a code for it. But yes, but they're all around the behavioral questions. How did you handle X, Y, or Z? It's very important if you're thinking about becoming a consultant. How do you do your business development? Sales is hugely related to emotional intelligence. And then the last part is if you're thinking about going onto a board and you start having to deal with a very diverse group of people and some people that you don't have direct control over. So all of these places, emotional intelligence touches your life. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to start with setting the stage a little bit, and then I'm actually going to have you experience emotional intelligence based on some of your own experiences in life. So for setting the stage, I want to start with a question. In your life, in your work world, or wherever, kind of keep family out of this, okay? Because that's a whole different topic. What has been your greatest leadership challenge? And specifically, I want you to focus on what has been your greatest leadership challenge as it relates to people. So, feel free, a couple people share. I'm going to grab my This is the wake you up part of the morning, okay? Yes?
I think one of the most difficult things I've had to do early in my career when I was leading an audit team was dealing with individuals that reported to me that had no motivation to do their work.
Okay. That's always a big one. Yes, Mark?
Working for someone with questionable ethics.
Okay.
For me, if somebody can work for a company a long time, like as a change agent, if they've been there 10, 15 years, they'll always tell you why they want to get a local worker. So
We've always done it this way, type of.
yeah, exactly.
I just came across that one just the other day. Jerry, you were going to say something?
This is really aging me, but back at CILC, Continental Illinois Leasing, we had two older gentlemen who were trying to implement Excel or whatever it used to prior to Excel. One
Lotus.
guy was, what's that?
Lotus.
Lotus, right. Maybe I'm not so old now. But yeah, and one guy was more than happy to embrace it, and the other guy just didn't want nothing to do with it. So just trying to let them know and trying to you get them to the water, but you got to let them drink too.
Yeah.
Force them to, but how do you do that?
Yeah.
So similar.
Yes, Jennifer.
I would say it's people that are so wrapped up in their own agendas that then they either fail to listen because they're waiting to speak, or don't recognize that you should probably, to connect with that person, meet them at their pace. And that was something I learned very, very early on in my career because I came from Chicago and then took a role in Springfield, and the pace went from this to this, and having to adjust to that.
I think
it's kind of related. I think the short attention span, like you have to, you have to talk and keep them hold their attention until you finish what you have to say. I think that's the challenge.
All right, I'm going to two more and then I'm going to keep going. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
For me,
I'll leave.
for me, it's dealing with similar pace of different cultures. So we had operating companies in Asia and Europe, especially in Europe, the pace and the kind of the work habits are a little more sane, if you will, than in the U.S. So dealing with that difference where we want everything immediately in the U.S. and they're going home at 4:30 every day.
And mine would be when you have someone who has a very big ego, and if it's not their idea, they don't want to implement it. So how do you steer them to think it's their idea?
All right, so you touched on very common topics. I will share with you, we've been having challenges with this today. Yours does. I'm going to have to do the, sorry about that. There we go. 6 different topics that often come up as leadership challenges. And you touch on every single one of this. I think I heard somebody talk about motivating employees. Building consensus, that sometimes when there's somebody in the room who thinks they're smarter than everyone else. Change management, I heard that. So these are 6 leadership challenges, and each one is around managing people. Now, interestingly enough, the more you move up into the organization, the more you tend to have these types of skill sets. How do you handle these types of leadership challenges? And my dear friend Daniel Goldman, oh gosh, this is going to be frustrating here. I'm really sorry about this. Let's try this again, this way. I guess I'm going to stand here. Technical and functional knowledge is extremely important as you move up. In fact, when I work with leadership development, one of the things I always share with them is that your employees value your competence. But the differentiator between being a great leader and just an average leader is your emotional intelligence. And that's that engaging yourself and helping others move the business forward. So this is from Daniel Goleman in 1998. Anybody, you guys familiar with who he is? Anybody not? Okay. So he has written the initial emotional intelligence in the workplace books. Kind of was what we call the father of emotional intelligence. Came up with a model in the 1990s that really sort of kick-started this becoming part of what you need to look at when you talk about development and leadership in the business world. So, interesting, this was in 1998. In 2015-16, the World Economic Forum put together what are going to be the top skills by the year 2020, 1 year from now. Emotional intelligence is on that. What's really interesting about this is that the article was actually about the fourth industrial revolution, which is all around technology and artificial intelligence. So why isn't emotional intelligence on there? Anybody want to take a stab? Just take a wild guess. I mean, there's no wrong answer here. Yes?
Well, the rise of artificial intelligence is not capable of dealing with people. And so one differentiator that we will have will be our ability to work with people. And so one thing that they can't, the machine can't.
Right.
And also
although they may disagree with you on that, but yeah.
And a lot of tech companies are trying to learn how to build emotional intelligence into their applications.
Okay. Any other thoughts? So interestingly enough, I started reading the article. First I read the executive summary thinking I could skim through real quickly. Read the whole thing, which is only like 5 pages. Nothing about emotional intelligence. So then I said I'm going to read the whole thing. I find one paragraph about emotional intelligence, and it says, in the year 2020, emotional intelligence will be one of the top skills required. Period. Okay, this is not helping me very much, so I decided I had to create my own theory, and my theory was, for what it's worth, and you can take this for what it's worth, is as we do interact less and less face-to-face or voice-to-voice, when we do have interactions with each other, when we are in communication, when we are having some kind of personal relationship, it better be spot on. Because it used to be we could talk to each other up and down the hall, running, to the elevator. We would see each other in multiple meetings. All of those things have changed. And so you get one shot. You used to get 10 shots a day to have a really good relationship with a person. You get one. And you may not even get it every day. You may get it once every other week in a meeting. So it has to be spot on. Communications have to be such that people really perceive you well. You understand people, you come across very professionally and emotionally intelligent with others. So that's my theory on it. So I know I am with a group of finance people, and so normally I put this at the end of the presentation, but knowing I'm dealing with people who like numbers, I wanted to make sure you realize that there really are measurements of emotional intelligence. And you can improve the bottom line through emotional intelligence. If people are engaged, these are things you already know. Turnover costs are lower. If you are creating a positive environment for change, you can more effectively and efficiently implement change and lower the cost, whether it's opportunity cost or hard dollars. If you are an emotionally intelligent salesperson or customer service person, you're going to increase revenues. So we'll get into this a little bit more at the end, but I really, like I said, I know I'm dealing with finance. I better have some dollar results here. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the experience part of our morning. So I am not going to give you a definition of emotional intelligence today. It's a self-discovery. Partly because it's not that linear. A definition doesn't really work because you're going to hone in on one behavior, whereas emotional intelligence is a lot of different emotions. But what I am going to do This is driving me nuts. Is I'm going to give you some context, what I call myth busting about emotional intelligence, or EI if I happen to start using that. The first one is that it's not just a kumbaya session. It's not just touchy-feely. There's actually a science to emotional intelligence, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. There's neuroscience. So there are things that actually happen in your brain. The second piece of it is, it's not just about being happy. So question for you guys. When you are in a stressful situation, when things aren't going quite the way you hope they should be going, are you more analytical than when you're not in a stressful situation, when you're very happy? So think back on something really tough in your life. How did you handle that from an analysis perspective versus when things are like, you feel like you're on cloud nine? Tend to be more analytical? Yeah, Jerry.
I don't know if this is analytical, but I kind of circle the wagons and I just kind of concentrate on what I think I can control.
Yeah. Exactly. More reflective, possibly. So that is actually how most people react. So emotional intelligence is about the productive use of all emotions. Being upset, being unhappy, being happy, being content. All of those are okay. It's all around productivity and are you being productive? And generally, when people are in a stressful situation, they are more analytical, they're more aware of risks, and that's a better place to make some decisions sometimes than when you're super happy. Because when you're super happy, you're going, everything's going great, don't need to worry about it, I'm on cloud nine, I'm willing to take some risk, and you may make some bad decisions. The flip side of that, how many people have dealt with passive-aggressive people? I always get a laugh on that one. And that could take all morning talking about those experiences, I'm sure. Okay, passive-aggressive, a perfect example of when being happy is not productive, right? You pretend you're happy. You go along and you say everything's fine, and you never put your hand up and say, you know what, I'm not feeling really good about this. Let's sit down and talk about this and get ourselves level set again. And then aggression happens. So that's a great example of not a productive use of being happy. The last piece of it that I want to make sure you understand in terms of myth busting is, this is very similar to EQ. EQ. Everyone in this room is good at math. You wouldn't be in the careers that you're in. All your lives, when you were in school, you took math classes, you practiced, you made sure you did all the problems, you took the test, you didn't do well on the test, you asked for help, and you continued all the way through till you finally decide to major in things like finance or accounting or something that's somehow numeric based. Well, I got news for you. You didn't become Albert Einstein. You got better and better at what you were doing. You became very proficient, you became very competent, you became very successful, but your EQ did not go up dramatically. And it's the same thing, I'm sorry, your IQ didn't go up. It's the same thing with EQ. Practice, application can make you a very successful, emotionally intelligent person, and you do not have to become Mother Teresa at the end. So those are just a couple of things that I want to make sure you understand going into emotional intelligence. All right, so you have a piece of paper in front of you, and it's two-sided, and this is where you're going to have to do a little thinking. And I would like you to be on the part that says the best person I ever worked for. Okay? And I want you to think about somebody from your past that, and again, not a family member, but somebody from your past, preferably work or a coach or somebody maybe you served on a board with. And man, you just really enjoyed being with that person from a professional perspective. And I'm going to ask you I'm going to say 6 statements. And I want you to rate the person on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being that they didn't do this much, significantly less than other people, or 5, they did it significantly more than other people. and then a sliding scale in between. Okay? So you got your person? All right, so our first question is, they demonstrated awareness of their moods and emotions. Second one, they made others or you feel appreciated. They were open and honest about their mistakes, and theirs is important, not others' mistakes. And I'm giving you two options here because you may not have had one of the options. They made ethical decisions, or they made sure they considered their decisions and issues from multiple perspectives. Again, 1 less, 5 most, or more. Managed their emotions effectively in difficult situations. And last, recognized others' hard work and efforts and achievements. All right, so the next thing I'd like you to do, oops, you can add them up if you want. I want you to just come up with a little 1 or 2 word thoughts about how this person made you or others feel. Were you appreciated? Were you unappreciated? Were you valued? Were you rejected? Whatever those words are. Don't write whole statements. Just come up with maybe 4 or 5 different words. Okay, and then the last part of that page is at the bottom, your discretionary effort. Would you have moved mountains for this person? Or would you have said, I'll do whatever it is to keep my performance review great, but no more? Because I know everybody here is probably type A and they never would do 1, which is I won't do anything. All right, got it? All right, flip the paper over. And now you get to do the same thing for that person that was the most difficult that you ever worked with. So, very similar. So have that name. And I will tell you, if you need to put a 0 down instead of a 1, it's okay. All right, our first question again is demonstrated awareness of their moods and emotions. Second one, made others feel appreciated. I always love the laughs that go on when we do this one. Everyone's just sort of, there's a few snickers that happen when we do this one. Is open and honest about their mistakes. Not your mistakes, their mistakes. Makes ethical decisions or considers issues and makes decisions from multiple perspectives. Manages their emotion effectively in difficult situations. And the last one, recognizes hard work and achievements. All right, and at the below, some words about how they made you feel. Just 4 or 5 different thoughts. And your discretionary effort. How much effort did you put in for this person? Over and beyond what you intrinsically needed to do for yourself? Okay, add it up. So for the first one, your great ball, so to speak, or mentor, or whoever that person may have been. Who had a score of 30? Anybody give full 30? Okay. 24 or greater? 18 or greater? Okay. So pretty much, That's kind of the norm, anywhere from 18 to 30. You know, they got 4s, 5s, and 6s generally. For the difficult boss, I'm going to give him a complete 0. Oh, that person was really bad then. No redeeming characters. 18 or below. 12 or below. 6 or below. Okay. Pretty strong. So it's kind of interesting because this was just a really simple way of doing observable rating of people. You just did a very simple assessment on six components. Now, when we do emotional intelligence assessments, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, we actually do it on 42 components, but these are just 6. But they really hit. They really get the point across, don't they? Now, the question I have for you is how many of you this person was 5 years ago or more, either good or bad?
What was the question again?
How many for you was the person that you used for either good or bad, or best or challenging would probably be the nicer way to say it, was more than 5 years ago? Yeah, almost at least half of you, if not more. It sticks with you. It really stays with you, both on the positive side and the negative side. I always share with you at this point, my worst, I still have nightmares. I mean, I truly have nightmares. And I know when my life is feeling stressed out by other factors going on, when I start having what I call Christine dreams. Now, I have changed her name. But for the sake of this group, I have Christine dreams. And I get up and I tell my husband, gosh, I had a Christine dream again last night. I am waiting for the day I don't have a Christine dream within a 6-month period, because they still happen. That person had such an impact on my stress level at the time. And so, but I also, while I don't have dreams about this person, I can tell you instantly the person who was my best, and that person was 10 years ago. And just had an incredible impact on why I'm doing what I'm doing today versus having stayed in banking. Because they were that person who gave me confidence and courage to do something different. Okay, so let's move on to the word side. Anybody want to share some of the words that they put out there for their great person? Just throw some out there. Yeah.
Appreciated.
Appreciated. Valued. Trusted. Involved. Included. Concerned. Important. Right hand. Encouraged. Yes.
I put down many of those also. Then I also put down friend.
Friend. All really great feelings, right? Okay. How about for that other side? You can just say expletive deleted, okay?
Undervalued.
Undervalued. Small. Unwanted. Frustrated. Embarrassed. That's a big one. Yes. Rage.
Stressed. Incompetent. Stressed.
Pretty crappy words, right? I mean, there's no other phrase for it. I'm sorry. I mean, that's my expletive deleted. And what's really interesting is, sadly, based on neuroscience, we are more attuned to these negatives than we are to those positives. 3 times more apt to remember the negative words than we are the positive words. So when they impact you, when you have somebody like this, it stays with you a long, long time. All right, so I'm going to flip it a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to think less about yourself and think about what was the impact on your organization. And you don't have, pardon?
Everyone left.
Everyone left. That's a biggie. That happens a lot. So if you yourself, okay, sales can get hurt because you've lost the people, you've lost your salespeople. Are they committed to your product? If they're not happy in your organization, are they really selling as well as they should? If they've gotten beat up first thing in the morning, how are they treating your customers? And they get a customer service call. I mean, there's so many ripple effects that can happen when you have somebody who's not doing particularly well with emotional intelligence. And then for you as a leader, if you're a good leader, how hard is it to overcome the bad leaders in your organization? Remember, 3 times more attuned to the negative. And I always use the example, you walk into the office in the morning, and your very first meeting is with somebody in a bad mood versus somebody in a good mood. What's the impact for the rest of your day? So, anyway, a little bit about the experience of emotional intelligence. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the science. Now I will tell you, I was a history major and a music major. Science in my mind in college was to take astronomy because we had an observatory on campus and it was the easiest class to take. So this will be a very quick discussion about neuroscience. So here's my fancy picture, but here's what I really want you to understand. You stick a finger in your eye, and you stick a finger in your ear, and you have a merge in the middle of your head. You will reach a very primal part of your brain called the amygdala. Everybody ever heard of that? What's it known for? Pardon?
Emotions and instinct.
Emotions and instincts. You're jumping ahead. We gotta fight or flight. That's the part of your brain that you always hear about, fight or flight. I call it the reaction part of your brain. So it's not only fight or flight, but it's the emotions. It's the place where something makes you so angry, you start crying. At least I do. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Something makes me so happy, I start crying. It's that emotion part of your brain. And that's when you have very limited ability to control your emotions and you just kind of focus on your raw emotions. You're never using much more than your amygdala. Now, fortunately for us, through experience and practice and life in general, we learn how to control our emotions. And what that is actually your frontal cortex kicking in. And it's your frontal cortex that is your thinking part of the brain that says, you know what, when I cuss out that person, things don't go very well in the relationship afterwards. It's kind of bad. Or when I show somebody great appreciation, I'm able to get them to do things for me in the future. So that's that, being able to go back and forth between your amygdala or that fight, flight, reaction part to the thinking part saying, okay, what's the best way to handle the situation? So that's my very simple explanation of the science of emotions. And obviously, they have a great impact on you because they impact your decisions. Do you do something knee-jerk or do you think about it? Do they impact your behaviors? Do I use the behaviors I know work best? And then if I have good decisions and I'm using the right types of behaviors, my performance, my productivity will go up. Interestingly, and this is the part that I think is more relevant in this day and age, is our reaction are not any different when we get into social events. So there's 5 social events that I think are important. This is our fight and flight in the 21st century. Are you impacting my status? Have you said how important I think you are? Or have I discounted all your thoughts and made you feel bad about your decisions and the things that you are bringing to the table? Certainty. Do I jeopardize your view of the future? Or do I encourage how you see the future can be? Autonomy. Am I micromanaged? Or am I given the option to have new ideas, challenge the process, take action based on my thoughts. Relatedness. That one's kind of obvious. Do I have my toxic, are you kind of putting me in a toxic relationship situation, or are you putting me in a situation where I feel like, are there no hidden agendas, there's no silos? I know you've all dealt with silos, but rather there's shared goals and common ground. And the last one, fairness. Are you having a different set of rules depending on who the person is, or are you treating everybody equally? This is the 21st century view of fight and flight, in my mind. And this is where the emotional intelligence in our work world really come into play. The other thing I always like to share is that there's a lot of connection between mental fitness, which is also trending these days, and emotional intelligence. So as I was saying, very limited thinking when you just use your raw emotions. But when you start putting yourself in a kind of a neutral position, you start using your whole brain, you can have a much more open, expansive way of thinking. But here's the interesting thing. Only 20, and I know again because I'm with finance people, I make sure I got some percentages in here. Only 20% of Americans can do this at any time. Take this a little further, and this gets back to that 3 times attuned to negative. 70% of American thoughts are negative, and we have 60,000 thoughts a day. 42,000 negative thoughts. That's a lot to overcome. And that's why the words of you as a leader and your actions and your behaviors can be so impactful in the work world.
Is there another group besides Americans who does this better?
I don't have that. I have to admit, and you can say I took these statistics off of somebody who I heard present, and I want to make sure I give them recognition for it. This is the world. I mean, you're right, because we're becoming a global world, but I can't imagine we still don't have that tendency to be 3 times more negative.
Right, I'm wondering if
as humans. Yeah, but I think cultures can be very different. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the actual elements of emotional intelligence. So there's 6 different, before I go into this, I actually use a model by Genos. Genos is actually Australian. They have been around since the 1990s and just recently come into the United States. And what I mean by they've recently come into the United States is they've brought their assessment tools into the United States and sort of their material. So I got certified a while ago to assess and coach on emotional intelligence through their model. And I'll get to in a moment why I picked their model specifically, because I liked it the best. I actually looked at 4 or 5 because there are a number of models out there. But all of them start with self-awareness. This is one of the 2 components or elements of emotional intelligence you hear about the most frequently. This is, do you know your hot spots? Do you know your moods? Do you know your behaviors? Are you present when you're with people, or do you back off and you're totally disconnected? And oh, by the way, I'm going to provide these slides just so you guys know. The second one, which I would say is the second piece that most people are aware of, is awareness of others. Are you supportive? Do you listen? Are you sensitive to the needs of other people? But the reality is, this truly is only 40% of what emotional intelligence is really about. The third piece is authenticity. Are you ethical? Are you honest? Are you trustworthy? Are you straightforward? And that means you are willing to have the difficult conversation with people. You don't back off and say, I'm going to avoid it. I'm willing to have that difficult conversation, but I'm also willing to have it in a very sensitive way, a very constructive way. Do I have hidden agendas? Do you avoid those? Essentially, the big part to me is always, do you say you will do what you say you will do? Now the next piece is why I picked Genos. This ties to what we do each and every day, and that is we make decisions, right? I mean, we have to make decisions all day long in our work world, our personal life, wherever. So this piece is around, do I take the time to look at the big picture? Do I step back and think of how what I decide will impact others? And did I listen to them, and did I take into account their concerns, their values, etc.? So to me, that's incredibly important in emotional intelligence. It's not just about I'm aware of my moods, I'm aware of what you're thinking, but I actually enact upon it. It's part of my decision making. Now this isn't to say that you can't make that tough decision once in a while. Where, hey, you know, there's a sense of urgency, something has to be done immediately, and boom, you have to make that decision. And you really sometimes have to say, I'm making this decision regardless of the impact it has on other people, because it has to be made now. The difference is, if you have to do that, an emotionally intelligent person will take the time to explain to others why they made that decision, why they had to do it without taking in the thought process of other people, what's causing this sense of urgency. That's the difference between a commanding leader who just does, I think somebody said, they just do what they think has to be done, as opposed to the commanding leader who says, you know what, I'm going to do what has to be done, but I'm going to help you understand the journey and help you with the buy-in. I always use the example for those of us in banking. 2008 and 9, when the banks were about to implode, and some did, some really difficult credit decisions had to be made. And we took a guy who was the most commanding person in the organization, and we put him in charge of credit, and credit risk specifically. And he had to make those tough decisions. But he knew to sit down with everybody as he was making them and say, this is what we have to do. We won't be here tomorrow if we don't do it. And this is what I need from you. As opposed to just saying, sorry guys, this is what we're doing, end of subject, just do it. It hugely changed the environment. And I think it's actually what did or did not keep that particular bank from folding, because we were down to $1 a share. We were in big trouble, big trouble. So anyway, so emotional reason, that's the one I like this particular model for. The next one, self-management, is the one that when I coach people, I always start with. Self-management is actually around how well are you taking care of yourself? Because you know what? If you don't take care of yourself, none of this other stuff works. It's really hard to be aware of your moods. It's really hard to care about other people. It's really hard to make good decisions if you're tired, you're stressed. So I always say you start with self-management. How do you build your own resilience? And you do this in 4 different ways. The first one is activity. Activity, are you getting enough sleep? Are you making sure you get enough sleep, which is a commodity, I know. If you're an exerciser, are you exercising? The second one is your thinking. Do you make sure you keep yourself with positive people versus negative people? Do you try to listen to other people and their viewpoints and somehow understand things from different perspectives than your own? The third one is relationships. Again, do you make sure you stay in the most positive relationships, but do you build relationships? Do you take the time to seek out and get to know people on a personal basis? And then the last one is your environment. And that one is, you know what, turn off the emails once in a while. Don't do the 24/7 that we all do. Go on vacation, take a walk, actually eat lunch once in a while. How many people don't eat lunch? At work? Yeah. I mean, I was notorious for it. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, run downstairs and get a granola bar. That was lunch.
Snickers bar.
Snickers, yeah. My husband, it was always a bag of M&Ms. All right, so self-management. That's what's going to keep you from being kind of moody and temperamental, so to speak, and give you resilience. And then the last element of it is positive influence. Don't forget to celebrate the big wins and the small wins. We do a pretty good job sometimes of recognizing people, but we don't always go so far as to celebrate. And I think that's a really important one. And sometimes this is just as simple as making sure that everybody knows that you're saying thank you. Just a simple thank you once in a while. All right, so those are like I said, the 6 elements that I think are the most important. And would you agree that most people only talk about the first 2, self-awareness and awareness of others? I swear, when I read articles, it always seems like we never go into these deep dives. So what I was sharing with you earlier is I took one statement, and these are the same statements that you had that I asked you. So I know it's a little bit of an eye chart here, but that demonstrates awareness of others, etc. I took one statement of an assessment for all 6 components. There's actually 42. For each one of these, there are 7 different concepts, elements that are important to be emotionally intelligent. So, as I shared, I do this for a living. So let me give you my little infomercial just for a moment. Coaching and assessing, both self-assessments and 360s for organizations that want to have both up and full-scale assessment, and a 180, just if you're doing a peer group or you want to know how you rate with your team. So it's something that I actually do when I present to a group like this, have a introductory program where you can do a self-assessment and get 2 hours of coaching and some information on how to deep dive into emotional intelligence and prepare you for what's next, whether that's interviewing or wanting to move up in the organization or move to a board position. So it's something that I provide if you're interested in it. You can pick up my card or reach out to me. All right. So how are we doing on time? We're doing, I want to make sure we're doing good. All right. So the last piece, I just want to tie a couple of loose ends together here. One is emotional intelligence really does directly tie back to leadership. I also do some work with Leadership Challenge. Has anybody heard about Leadership Challenge as one of the leadership models? It's done by a gentleman named Barry Posner and James Cosley. Leadership Challenge started in the 1980s, and I use it from college level all the way up to when I'm coaching executives. And I pick it because it's really simple. It's 5 concepts: modeling the way, shared vision, challenging the process or taking risks and thinking innovatively is another way of thinking of that one, enabling others to act, and encourage the heart. And emotional intelligence ties back to every single one of those things. So I just wanted to share that. And then the last thing I had for you, and the picture would be an eye chart, so I'm going to hand this out to you, is how leaders' behaviors go directly into impacting employee actions. And when you take those 2 and you put them together, you create the culture of your organization. And if you take the leaders' behaviors, the employee actions, and the culture of the organization, we get to those KPIs that I was sharing with you at the beginning. Sales growth, employee engagement, i.e. less turnover, customer retention, customer satisfaction, and higher survey scores from your customers, increased productivity, lower M&A costs, etc. So I will hand this out to you so you can have the details, and it's a nice summation of how everything we talked about today ties back to the impact it has on you as a leader and on your organization or the people that you may be working with, whether in an organization or on a board or when you're trying to think of those behavioral answers when you're doing an interview. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Yes?
When we did the first exercise, the people that we had the worst experience with, those people are not going to go through this exercise because they don't think they need it, right? The people that are at the top don't need it because they're doing it. So you're really only addressing
it is a challenge. It is definitely a challenge, but I will tell you, if you get the right organization's talent acquisition and HR groups and such to bring it into the organization and you put everybody through it, you do almost always have somebody go, you know what, there's something here I could do. Not to the degree we probably sometimes would like, but, and that's where the executive coaching comes into. You know, you sit down and you just have to spend the time with somebody and say, you know what, you may think this, but that's not how others are seeing you. We've done the assessment, and everybody says you're doing quite the opposite of what you think you're doing. But you got to get in at an organizational level for that. But you're right, an individual person, they're not going to sign up, unfortunately. Yep. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Yes.
More a comment than a question. At one time, I was in a company that was very well regarded, and one of the things they did is work on engagement scoring and engagement reporting for other companies, and they did their own internal engagement, and that was the place where I had the worst experience. But the thing I wanted to comment on, how quickly that culture changed when the leadership at the top changed. It had built a reputation over years and years and years from the Chicago area, and completely went into decline with the leadership change, where they disregarded things around the engagement survey that went out dealing with folks the right way, I would say. So I just was amazed at how quickly that could happen.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be these real complex engagement surveys. I have one version that's about 4 questions, and it can really have an organization go, oh, we're missing a few things. So thank you for sharing that, because that's often what comes out of doing emotional intelligence, is that organizations say we need to start doing employee engagement surveys, which I know has been a topic that people are a little tired of hearing, but they do make an impact. Any other thoughts and questions? Yes?
Yeah, I have more of a thought. I think that it would be relevant to people in transition if they took the opportunity during interviews to just, as a statement, kind of bring forth some examples and tell people at the hiring table, people enjoy working for me, and kind of round out, if you can, some situations. But even the statement in of itself, if you can get the people on the other end thinking in that way, because I just don't think that, you know, and you had mentioned HR, I don't think that that's being accounted for to the degree that it should. Sitting here, I was just blown away at just thinking how much it would impact organizations if this was placed more at the top. I found I've worked with 4 people who are majority, unfortunately, on the negative end. I'm like, how did they get here? Like, no one likes working for them. Maybe it's just me. But I think taking that opportunity to state it, maybe have some examples when you're given the chance. Because usually they want to hear from you and you have an opportunity, you know, to talk about yourself. And I think this would be huge.
Well, and there's a way you can get them to do that. And that's to do with things like ask questions like, tell me a little bit about the culture of your organization. So get away from the functional topics that they may be asking you, or, you know, but they always, a good interviewer will say, do you have questions for me? And if you ask questions about things like, what's the culture, what's the environment, then it opens up the door for you to share those types of things about how you make an impact. So you can do it. You can, like you said, depends on the recruiter, and generally you have generally you can do it. I don't think I've maybe one interview I've had, and I think I kind of wanted an ejection button to get out of that interview because I knew it was just such a bad fit. You can usually get that kind of conversation going. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other thoughts? Is this helpful?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good. And like I said, there are 42 things you can work on if you really want to, but they really focus on those 6 concepts. If you really think about those 6 concepts and how to be more present, how to be more empathetic, how to be more trustworthy, how to be more resilient, how to be more expansive in your thinking, and how to be more of a positive influencer, you're well on the way. Yes?
One thing I didn't really see a lot of, which I was a little surprised that I would think I would see more of, is about listening. In the equation as part of the emotional intelligence. I mean, it was important to some of the things we talked about, but I feel that skill is so critical to this equation. And I was surprised I didn't hear more about that.
And that's a good point. So thank you, because I'll make note of that. That's definitely a big part when I talk about awareness of others. I actually really work with people on listening. And it's something I think two people said about listening to understand, not listening to respond. Because people are real, I mean, I really just like, stop right now. You know, they're talking, I say, stop, stop, stop. What did that person just say? And they can't tell you because they were so busy thinking about how they're going to answer the question, but they only are thinking about the first section of the question, right? So yeah, so thank you for bringing that, because listening is huge. What's the thing about you were given 2 ears, 1 mouth? Yes.
Could you give some more examples or suggestions from the excuse me, interviewing, hiring perspective to throw the interviewer, HR person off guard a bit to be able to highlight these sorts of things? Because the reason I'm saying this is because I feel like the way our society has trended, to lead back to your question, is when people are more stressed and they're more analytical. I think between social media, between the pressures, between just what's going on in society, people have been highly analytical, so they're looking very much for those unicorns in their hiring process, and maybe not thinking about these other aspects that you can provide value to them. So in order to get that into the interview process.
I think one of the ways you can do that is to start by talking about what you think are the important characteristics of a person in a job. So when they ask you a question, tell me a little bit about you. And you can even start out with saying, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my functional backgrounds, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my behaviors and my ability to enact change, to create a positive team environment. Use those buzzwords. And then go into explaining both those functional things you're able to do and those things that you can bring to the table that are beyond. So I think you can set it up at the very beginning. And actually that will oftentimes almost give you free license to talk the whole time and not get a lot of questions answered, because you're actually already giving them the answers to probably 6 or 7 questions they already are going to ask you. Because usually, and Kathy, you might be able to share more about this, there's questions about, tell me a little bit about team building. Tell me a little bit about when you were in a difficult situation, how did you handle it? Generally, those types of questions are asked nowadays in interviews. And those give you the opening that you're looking for. So you just have to listen for them, and if you don't hear them, then say, let me tell you a little bit about how I come to work as a whole person, and go into some of those things. All right, I think we're at the top of the hour, so thank you very much. And if you have a chance, I do have some information up here about some of our services, as well as that emotional intelligence assessment, if you would be interested in that. And thank you very much.
Thank you.